I know this is late, but as the old saying goes,
better never than late.
Wait, that's not right.
What I meant was,
better late than never.
as part of the first year anniversary, Lost Stories released brand new weapons for older Knightmare Frames, which not only give the Knightmare Frames more versatility, but
Significantly
buffed their stats, and in some cases,
It was necessary.
let's go over the new weapons. The Sutherland Purist version received a long-range cannon similar to Dalton's Gloucester, but its base and skill attack deal more damage and the Knightmare Frame costs less to deploy. Plus, upgrading it also improves its normal range weapon stats, so now it does
Even more.
damage that's similar to the Blue Baron Sutherland.
Makes sense.
This makes Dalton's Gloucester
obsolete.
and is an excellent budget substitute for the Lancelot Flight-enabled version or the custom Sutherland. Cornelia's Gloucester received a rifle as a new ranged weapon, just like the anime. It only has a base attack, which is
terrible, just terrible.
That doesn't matter.
what matters is through upgrading this ranged weapon, you can
Significantly.
increase the damage of its melee weapon, which addresses my complaints as to why a broken version of her Gloucester originally dealt more damage than one in perfect condition. I think they also add the additional effect where after using its skill, it increased its block by 5 for 27.5 seconds. This Knightmare Frame is now my go-to for assault pilots given its low cost and insane damage output. I am pleased by these improvements. The Percival received its missile launcher and Hadron blaster, which has the same base range as most Knightmare Frames that also have ranged weapons, and the skill covers the same area as the Mordred's base range.
That's quite a mouthful.
It only has a base damage of 285 though.
Which is fine.
The skill attacks 3 enemies in range, dealing 3.75 times the attack power, which is average considering most Knightmare Frames now deal additional damage on top of an ability like that.
There's another problem.
The range weapon's skill gauge charges passively like the Gwaine, but you can't increase it through battle like normal, which you could with the Gwaine.
That's just annoying.
But upgrading the range weapon increases its melee weapon stats by 10, making the Percival
Even better.
which is saying something because its melee damage was already top 5 in the game. Now it has the second highest base attack in the game.
For now.
This new weapon skill is not the best, but its base range is a solid substitute if you don't have a Knightmare Frame like the Lancelot. The Gekka received a ranged weapon, which is great, but when are we getting the one for the Gurren Mark II?
Hey, a guy can dream, can't he?
The base range of this weapon is
God-awful.
mirroring the first Glass Skull. I mean, you could use Nagisa with it.
But, not really though.
Its base damage is also mid. The special attacks 3 enemies in range, which is equivalent to most ranged weapons.
And
Decreases the action speed of the enemy Knightmare Frame by 0.825 times for 30 seconds, and it doesn't
Stack.
like the other Knightmare Frames. If you upgrade the new weapon, the Gekka's melee damage increases, but the defense also does as well. I'm a fan of the melee increase, not the actual weapon itself. Why they give it such awful range? But at least we have something that can improve Nagisa's abilities. The Tristan now has the same /Harken weapon that we saw many times in the anime. It has the same base range as the Gwaine, but the skill covers all enemies
Around you!
providing even more coverage when compared to the Android. The skill attacks 5 enemies in range, dealing 5.5 times your attack power,
And that's pretty good.
since the base damage is 280. On deployment, like the Blue Baron Sutherland, the skill gauge fills up to 100%.
Immediately.
But there's one problem.
After using the Knightmare Frame skill, you have to wait for the gauge to passively charge like the Percival, so it's best to use this weapon with pilots that have fast relocation time. It does cost a bit to deploy, so keep that in mind. Upgrading this weapon increases the defense and the attack stats for the Tristan's melee weapon. I like the range of this special and that its skill gauge fills up completely on deployment. Waiting to charge is annoying, but it doesn't hurt the weapon. The Shenhu also got a new range weapon.
Yeah.
The base range and skill range are the same as the Gwaine. Its base damage though is higher at 320. The skill deals 7 times your attack power to 5 enemies in range.
And on top of all that,
Deals 8,000 damage.
Yay!
But it has to charge before firing. so it's best to know the map ahead of time to get the timing right for the attack. I mean, it thematically makes sense, but I don't think it works for the game. At least it boosts the attack stats of all pilots belonging to the Chinese Federation faction by 35% for 26.2 seconds.
There's just one problem.
There's only 3 pilots in the game, and besides Hanggu, there aren't any more new characters to add for this faction. So this secondary ability is
Extremely limited.
And to make matters worse,
upgrading the weapon only increases the Shenhu's melee weapon's defense and not attack stats. This weapon has insane potential, but it's just too inconvenient to pull off. You're better off using the Gwain or even a Knightmare frame like the Lancelot. So in conclusion, it's
Just awful. Terrible.
And finally, we have the Mordred, which got the largest buff with a new melee weapon this time instead of a range. In fact, it's the only one that got a melee weapon. This weapon has the highest defense in the game, with impressive attack stats to go along with it.
Wow, you weren't kidding.
It only attacks one enemy at a time though.
Who the hell cares?
But the special is,
The goat.
it deals 18,999 damage to 3 enemies in range. Why 18,999 and not 19,000?
Who the hell knows?
Did I mention its skill range is 4 spaces ahead and
It wasn't good enough for you.
it reduces damage 1,000 or less for 17.5 seconds after using its special? If you upgrade this melee weapon, which you absolutely should, it'll increase its range weapon by 10.
This is fine.
This weapon is clearly the best of the new ones we got. Its insane stats go well with both defensive and Annihilator pilots, plus it's just fun to use. Overall, I'm happy with the majority of these weapons as they rebalance older Knightmare frames so they can still be useful as they continue to make even better ones in the future. The only one I wouldn't recommend using is the Shenhu's.
It's not worth it.
Definitely give the other weapons a try. By the way, you probably noticed I didn't cover the Florence's new weapon. That's because I discussed it already in this video right here, so go check it out.